Hey cats, Ed Bud here. I've got a review of the new version of Nike's Max Cushion Cruiser, that monster ZoomX Invincible Run 3. Is it worth the upgrade over the now heavily discounted version 2? Let's leap in and see if this one's to pick up immediately or perhaps one to wait and pick up down the line. Thanks for tuning in, people. It is always appreciated. Help the channel out to continue to grow by hitting us up with a super thanks if you're enjoying the videos. Also, make sure you hit that subscribe button, click the bell below for notifications. Also, give this video a thumbs up like and share it with your running buddies. Thanking you, Tar. This is a shoe that I've picked up with my own Earth credits. Get my honest opinions as per usual. We have a weight of 305 grams here, or 12.3 ounces in my UK size 11, US size 12. Checking out the table on the screen right now, you'll see that each iteration has remained pretty consistent in terms of weight. Only 6 grams difference between all 3 versions. Again, Nike could have attempted to weight relieve this shoe. It does seem to be a real favourite amongst the viewers, but they're keeping it pretty consistent, so I guess at least it hasn't gained any weight. In terms of midsole stack, I've got about 47mm here in the heel and round about 36 in the forefoot. I did measure my pair of the Invincible Run Flyknit 2. Those, after about 160, 170 miles or so, are coming in at about 44mm in the heel. I would suggest that that's down to a little bit of compression and use over time. They've just squashed down a little bit more. Though one of the big changes here in the Invincible Run 3 is the fact that we've got a fabric Strobel that sits on top of the midsole. That is not the case in the V2. That was just ZoomX straight underneath the insole. The fabric Strobel's adding a couple of centimeters of extra stack height, I think. So I don't think there's any major difference in terms of extra foam or anything in the Invincible Run 3. There is a very slightly wider landing platform though in the 3. There's about half a centimeter here in the forefoot, pretty much exactly the same in the heel. I got these for about 155 Earth credits with a little bit of discount. Let's get into the review. We'll start with the upper first. We have some big changes here in the upper of the Invincible Run 3. Now this knit or Flyknit maybe is a little bit more like the stuff that we've seen in some of the more recent Nike shoes. It's far thinner than the uppers we've had in the previous 2 versions of the Invincible. Part of that change is the removal of the gusseting material that was in the other 2 versions. This is just a straight tongue. You can move it around, position it where you want. It's a far more conventional upper setup this time around. They've also got rid of those very chunky thick laces. I was never a big fan of those. Just some standard sort of width laces this time round. Not all that flexible. There is a completely unnecessary pull tab here at the back of the shoe. If there ever was a running shoe that didn't need one, it's this. The heel section is totally revised though over the V1 and V2. It does remind me of the Infinity Run in terms of how the collar is constructed, though you've still got quite a rigid heel counter back here. There's a really thick plastic clip that now runs around the back of the heel. I think that's mainly there to give the shoe a little bit of structure. It's quite the difference from the one that we had in the V2. This is almost like a silicone type material. I found with a decrease in the padding around the tongue and the heel collar that you really need to use a runner's knot this time around. That stops any sort of heel slip. You really do need to ratchet the tension of the laces down a little bit more. But once you've got it locked in, no worries. There is enough lace there to do that runner's knot though. Only barely. I think if you didn't like the overly warm upper that was on the V1 and V2, you're going to like this update. It's that little bit thinner. Feels like that original Infinity Run upper mixed with the midsole of the original Invincible Run. It's only taken them like 3 years or so to get to this combination. Fortunately, no pointless reflective strips around the medial and lateral sides of the toe box. They are gone. We just have one big welded on swoosh at the front. There's now a run of reinforced eyelets on both the lateral and medial side of the upper. Those replace the individual ones that we saw on the V1 and V2. I think we got a manufacture date here of between June and October of 2022, meaning these have actually made it to the shelves much faster than the time between the V1 and V2. Initial run was 15 miles or 24 kilometers. The upper was very comfortable, very fitting. No rubbing in the toe box on the sides of my toes, thankfully. No blisters this time round. Didn't really feel any pain from the lace tension on the top of the foot. I think the upper does a really good job of actually securing the foot down on top of that ZoomX slab. Didn't feel like the shoe was creating lots of heat or anything. My feet felt really great. In terms of looks as well, I think this one is much better than the V2. Much more wearable for other use outside of running, like casual sort of stuff. The V2 did not look great. It looked a bit bulbous and weird. I'm going to give this a 2.8 out of 3 for the upper after my initial run. Does the job for the intended purpose of the shoe. Midsole. Midsole.
Midsole now.
Midsole wise, it's pretty much the same deal as the last two versions of the shoe. Maybe it feels a little bit more controlled and stable though, and here's why. I think it's down to 3 changes that Nike have made with the Invincible 3. The slightly wider forefoot, the underfoot fabric strobel, and the extra rubber that we've got on the outsole. Perhaps the upper fit also benefits that midsole feel too. I think perhaps now you can tailor the lace tension a little bit more. The lacing just does a little bit more. There's more of a range of sort of tightness you can achieve. All they've really done here in the midsole is carve out some of the foam and painted it different colours. I think it did appear actually in some early pictures of the shoe that perhaps there was some sort of frame around the midsole. Well, that simply isn't the case. It's just a lick of paint here and there. The texture actually on some parts of the midsole is actually a little different from what we've had in the previous 2 versions of the Invincible. You had a kind of plasticky feel here in the V2. Feels a little bit more coarse this time round to the touch. Maybe these changes are to actually improve the durability of the midsole foam. That was always a bit of an issue. In the V1 or the V2, if you scraped or gouged the midsole against some sort of sharp object, then it would tear and crease very easily. Certainly the heel section here is a little bit less bulbous this time round. Doesn't really protrude out from the sides and around the heel as it did in the original version and the second version. I remember cutting off some of that excess foam from the V1. You've probably seen that video, the custom Invincible run. Didn't really affect the stability of the shoe that much in the heel, especially if you land on the midfoot. On the long run today, it was perfectly serviceable at 8 minutes per mile or around about 5 minutes per kilometre. That easy to aerobic effort. I mean, I could have pushed the pace a little bit more today, perhaps a little faster, but Big Al and I were quite happy at that speed. Incidentally, a really fantastic long run today, 15 miles in the books with Al. Just chatting, it just drifted by, 2 hours in the blink of an eye. We'll have to do that again very soon, young man. Certainly more of an impact absorber than an energy returner, this one. ZoomX working very well here. I really liked the ZoomX in the Vomero 16 as well. Similar sort of story, I suppose, and I can't see anybody grabbing this shoe to run a really fast marathon. That's not what it's for. Easy paces, daily recovery stuff, some long runs, that is the forte of the Invincible 3. Just like Grandad in Only Fools and Horses, his forte was the Christmas pudding. I really do like that off-white sort of sail colour to the midsole as well. Very tasty. It's a great profile as well. Look at that. I can see people picking these up for casual and walking use. Maybe if you work in retail or something, you're stood up for long periods of time, the Invincible could make you feel invincible. Nothing else aside perhaps from the Prime X has got the same forgiving foot feel. Top of the pops for cushion. And now it's slightly more refined as well. Well done, Nike. I'm going to give it a whopping 2.8 for the midsole after my initial run. Legs feeling pretty good, and that is not always the case with other foams. Let's get stuck into that very robust outsole now. Outsole wise, it's a total change up here actually. Really different to the V1 and V2. It's a much thicker rubber here up front and in the midfoot. Some considerable lugs in the heel. There's also a fair amount of exposed midsole foam here as well in the arch. That's quite a switch up from the V1 and V2. There was much more of a sort of cutout here in terms of the arch area. That exposed midsole foam comes over the arch, and I noted some improved stability in the Invincible 3. That also might be down to that thicker rubber application as well. Things feel a little bit more rigid there, a bit more stable. The lugs are a little deeper in this version. They're filled in the middle of the shoe, which offers a torsion bar-like property to the Invincible. that's been lacking in previous versions. Much less flex to this one, a touch more rigid in the base, and that is a big improvement for me for this shoe. Bit of a downer, I did find quite a lot of mud and grime, some debris here in the little spaces between the lugs. Nothing that a quick brush or a bit of handiwork with the jeweler's screwdriver couldn't sort out though. A great outsole design once again for a multitude of different surfaces, different terrains. It's just going to eat it up. If you run on road, on tarmac, on concrete, even on some grass, light trails, I think you'll be fine here. I mean, I guess that's what you would expect from a shoe called the Invincible. An improvement for me in terms of the outsole, though from a stability aspect this time around. I'll give it a 2.7 out of 3 for the outsole after my initial runs. We got to talk value now. Well, sadly, there's a small increase in price of about £5 over the V2. There's masses of that version on discount right now, under 100 smackaroonies. Is there enough here in the V3 to make this a essential purchase? I think if you're at the end of the life of perhaps your pair of V2s, they're starting to get a bit compressed and they just don't have the same life, then I think yes. I think you'll get loads of miles out of the V3. There's some subtle improvements there, some minor tweaks to the upper, midsole and outsole design. It's in fact one of the more drastic changes to a Nike shoe that we've seen in some time. On the surface it kind of seems like the same, but actually I've reviewed all of them and this one actually is one of the more subtle and well thought out changes that we've had. They've improved the on-foot experience rather than just knocking out a new version just to rake in a bit more cash. We tend to get those upper changes, don't we, and they kind of leave the midsole practically the same. That's not the case here. Is it worth £169 at retail? There's a lot of max cushion shoes at the moment, though this one comes in at a slightly more reasonable price. That's a tiny bit cheaper than that Nimbus 25, way cheaper than the retail price of the SC Trainer, though that seems to have fallen a bit flat. It's just loads of deep discounts on that and a very high retail price on launch. I mean, if the Invincible 1 and 2 are working for you, perhaps you've just picked up a new pair of the V2s on discount, there's not really a massive reason to go and buy the V3. 15 miles, 24 kilometers out the box, and it was magic really. It worked fantastically well on the long run. No major issues for me, a really nice cushioned cruiser. It felt very consistent, I suppose. Not really like a bulbous clog at all. A squashy pillow of +10 foot forgiveness. Just don't expect an Alphafly or a Vaporfly. Yes, this is ZoomX, but it's implemented in a very different way. This is a Sunday school shoe for the school of the long run. It's a well put together shoe as well. At last I got a Nike with no glue marks, dodgy stitching or shoddy paintwork. A niche shoe, but it certainly works well for me, for what I want it for anyway. A 2.6 out of 3 after my initial runs for value. Scores for the Invincible Run 3 on screen now. An improvement in all areas really over the V2. Will you be picking this one up? Have you picked it up already? Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments. Quick musical interlude for you. Classic album for you. The CD cover's actually really faded. It's almost gone yellow there. The White Stripes with Die Style. I believe that's how you pronounce it. If not, let me know in the comments. Brilliant production on this one. It sounds like it's just recorded in some sort of bedroom or something. Very minimal microphones, lots of noise. It's just fantastic. It sounds real. It sounds like a piece of art that someone's created on a canvas. Hello Operator is gritty. Death Letter, wow. With the slide playing there. Lots of distortion and overdrive on Jack White's guitar. Track 10, Let's Build a Home, is very primal, as is Jumble Jumble. Everything here has a lot of energy. It's pure rock and roll distilled into this sort of capsule. Really pleased I've still got this original CD version. Remember seeing the White Stripes in Bristol. Must have been 2001 or something. They were fantastic. One of the best live performances I can remember. Go and check it out, guys. Die Style from the White Stripes. Thanks for tuning in, people. Hope you enjoyed today's video. If you've got any questions at all on the Invincible 3, let me know down in the comments. Hit that subscribe button, click the bell below for notifications. Also give this video a thumbs up like and share it with your running buddies. My name's Ed Budd and I'll be seeing you